Hi there YouTube, I hope you're all well and I hope you're all keeping yourself safe and staying at home. That's extremely important at the moment. Right, seeing as we're all stuck indoors, I thought I would do something a little bit different today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over with you and show you how I do my post-processing. Now, I don't use Photoshop or Lightroom, although I have Photoshop installed on here, simply because I find the software that comes with the Apple Photos app works for me, for my needs. It works much better. I don't do image blending and composites and all that sort of stuff, dodging and burning and all that. Well, I do a little bit of dodging and burning, which you'll see, but I like to keep the process simple and as close to the reality of what I saw at the scene at the time. So I'm going to open a raw file. I'm going to open an image here, and it's going to be, let's see now, which one shall I choose? Choose this image here. Right, so I've opened my image. Now the first thing I'm going to do is, up on the right hand side of the screen you'll see a button there that says edit. So I'm going to press that, and that opens up this whole control panel here, which has a whole load of functions, editing, post-processing functions that I'm going to be using to edit this image. Also along the top in the middle of the screen here, we've got the crop tool, we've got the filters which you can add, which I'll show you in a bit, and then we've got all our adjustments. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to crop this image because I don't like all of this on the right of the image here. So I'm going to bring it over, let's see, just drag this to about there, I think. So that makes the image a little bit more square, and it's gotten rid of all that distracting stuff on the right hand side of the image. So now all we've got is the two trunks, the area in the middle which was my focal point at the time, which was the rock and the bank on the other side. We've got the water leading through, there's a slight diagonal through the middle, and then we've got our foreground here. So that to me feels and looks a bit more balanced and a bit better without all that stuff on the right hand side. So I'm happy with that. So now I'll go to my adjustments, and that opens all of this control panel here. So in our light adjustments we have brilliance, exposure, highlights, shadows, brightness, contrast, and something called black point. Now they're all pretty self-explanatory. You can also add an auto adjustment here as well, which basically means the software will decide for you what it does with the image. So I'll just show you what happens if I click that, and that's what it's decided to do, which I don't particularly like. Now you can take that back. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do, as I look at the image, I can see here that the shadows in the foreground are a little bit dark, so I'm going to bring that up slightly, not too much. So I've gone up to 0.21, and I think that's enough there. I'm going to add some contrast. Now I just want you to watch what happens to the water as I bring this up to about 0.18. So it's now given a lot more definition to the detail in the water and the rocks, and it's given me a nice bit of separation here on the trees as well. So we've adjusted the shadows, we've adjusted the contrast. I'm going to tiny little bit of a black point. Now what the black point does, self-explanatory, it just increases the intensity of the blacks. Now if you wanted a milky looking image, you could bring that all the way down, and that's what you end up with. What I want to do is I want to bring it up ever so slightly, just to give me that little bit extra definition around these dark areas here, just to make that pop a little bit more. You see on the underside of there, so I'm getting a nice bit of contrast now. Okay, so with regard to the light, I think that's enough. I might just pull the highlights down a little. No, that's too much. I'll just demonstrate to you what this does if I drag it all the way over. But no, in fact, I'm going to leave that where it is. So yeah, that for my light adjustments, I think that's enough. Okay, now on to colour. Now, I don't really want to adjust any of the colour here. I'm quite happy with the way the camera has rendered the colours in the scene. That's pretty much how it looked when I was there. So I don't really need to do anything with that, but I will show you what I can do. So if I click the auto button, that basically just saturates everything. So take that back. Now you can just individually, you can adjust the saturation, you can adjust the contrast of your colours, and you can adjust the colour cast, which basically just either gives you a cool sort of bluey colour cast or a more sort of yellowy greeny colour cast. But I'm going to leave all of that where it is. Next here we've got our black and white function. Now again, I'll click the auto button so you can see what it does, and that's what it's done to the image, which looks awful actually. So if I just take that back, put it back in colour. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the black and white, and then I'm going to show you what these different sliders here do. So we've got an intensity slider, we can adjust the neutrals, and we can adjust the tones to suit what we're looking for. And then if we want to, we can add grain to the image, which I definitely don't want. Now, any of these adjustments that you make, they're non-destructive adjustments, so you can get rid of them at any point. What you can do is you can, on the right of the adjustment panel, there's a little blue tick box there. If you just tick that, that now gets rid of everything I've just done. Alternatively, what you could do, if you wanted to leave that where it was, so let's say I wanted to go with that kind of look. Okay, so that's a really contrasty look, and I thought, well, you know, I quite like that, but I'll have a look at it later to see whether I change my mind or not. What you can do is, if you go up to your very top tab here, click on image, and then way down last from the bottom you've got duplicate one photo. If I click on that, that photo will now be duplicated in my photo files, that particular edit. So now if I get rid of that, it doesn't matter because I've got a duplicated file. Right. Next down is the retouch button. Now this is quite handy if you've got something in your image that you want to either clone out, or if you're editing a portrait and you want to get rid of some marks or something like that. Or if you've got a dirty sensor and you want to get rid of dust from your image, dust spots. So I'll just show you how that works. I'll use the zoom tab up here just to zoom into the image. I just wait for it to catch up. There we go. And then I'll select the retouch. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to erase that white blob on that stone. And there we go. I just tidy that edge up a little bit. And there we go. So now I've cloned out that white blob on that rock. So let's go back. Now when I zoom out, you would be forgiven for thinking that white blob was never even there in the first place. So it works really well. Okay, next down, there's a red eye function here which I've no idea what it does. I've never used it, so I don't know. There's a white balance function. Now that's self-explanatory. What you can do is you can adjust the various tones in your white balance, so you can warm it up, cool it right down. You can also choose an area of the picture, of the image, sorry, and you can decide to do it like that. Okay, next we have our curves. Now this is where it gets interesting because you can make some really good micro adjustments here. So let's just say I want to do the whole color spectrum. So what I can do there is I can lighten or darken the image depending on which part of the curve I choose. I can make very, very fine adjustments depending on the look that I want. We have another control here where we can make even more adjustments. So there's a lot of scope here. Now if you want to, you can adjust individually your color tones. So you can add red or any color you want in your spectrum to your image. So that's just how I wanted to pull the greens out and make the whole thing look a bit reddish. And then let's see if we can mess with the blues a little bit, so you can get a really kind of, well, kind of fantasy look. You could probably, I have never tried it myself, but I reckon if you messed around with this enough, you could probably make it look almost infrared. So let's just change that to black and white. So yeah, you can go either subtle or crazy with that stuff. So I'm going to get rid of all that. Now there's an area here where you can select individual colours and change the saturation of those colours. So I can add a load of blue to the water, or I could pull it out completely so that my water actually looks monochrome. How cool is that? If I choose the hue button, I can make the water appear almost turquoisey green, or I can give it a pinky look. Now this is an interesting function, the luminance slider. What that does, it acts almost like a polarizer. So if I drag it all the way up, you can see where it's added sort of glare to the water in some of these areas. If I pull it all the way down, it gets rid of it and blackens it off. Okay, so the next tool is the noise reduction tool. So we've got luminance noise, color noise, and detail. Now, one thing I will say about this software, which makes me prefer it to Photoshop, is that if I zoom into the image, I don't see any noise anywhere in that image, even though I've made some adjustments, although they were quite subtle adjustments. Now, I tend to find that using Photoshop or Lightroom, even making minor slight adjustments, it tends to add a little bit of noise to the image. And if you've got to make some quite dramatic adjustments, like cranking your shadows or stuff like that, then it can really make your image look quite messy and noisy. But nevertheless, we do have that option if we want to use it. The next tool down is the Sharpen tool, which I don't really use. Actually, no, I'll go back up because I've missed the definition tool, which I do like to use, and I just click the auto button, and I find that kind of brings out a little bit more detail in the image and makes it pop a little bit more. It's almost like a sharpening tool. Okay, so where was I? Yes, we've done Sharpen. I don't use that. So finally, the last tool that we've got here is the Vignette tool. Now, I like to use that. What I usually do is I usually click the auto button, so that'll give me some vignette, and then I'll decide on the strength of the vignette. So I can add a really strong dark vignette if I want to, and then you can adjust the radius to really almost keyhole the image if you want to. I'll leave that off for now because I want to show you how the filters work. So let's go to filters. So that's up in the middle of the screen there at the top. So we've got vivid, and again, these are all non-destructive. You can change these back whenever you want. Duplicate each image and then decide which one you prefer. Vivid warm, vivid cool, dramatic. I quite like that look. Dramatic warm, I like that look too. Dramatic cool, and that's your monochrome, and then you've got a silver tone, and then you've got one called noir, which, well, just like a high contrast black and white look. So yeah, you can add those filters to either to just a raw file or to an image after you've made some adjustments to it. But as I said, you can just go back to the original, and there you go. Now, let's just say that you've done all of this, you've been working on your image for a while, and you've made some duplicates, but you're thinking, well, I still want to keep the raw file. So what do? Well, you can go up to the far left of the screen there, the top corner, and there's a tab that says revert to original. So all you got to do is click on that, and there you go, you've got your original raw file. Click on done, and it is done. So yeah, I hope that was helpful. If you do use Apple computers, the photo app that comes with it has that software, whether you've got a laptop or a Mac, or I don't know if it's on phones or not. I know it's on the iPad Pros as well. And I definitely prefer it to working with a lot more complicated software like Photoshop, which I just find it all a bit daunting. It's not very intuitive, and well, I've just never had good results with it. I much prefer this. It's a lot simpler. I can add very subtle touches to my images. Doesn't add any noise or grain, and at any point I can just duplicate an image and then undo everything and start again. So yeah, hope you found that helpful. Stay safe. Give us a like, a subscribe, and leave comments as well if you like the video. And I will see you in the next one.